What better location to discuss bird flu than outside of a chicken coop, animal coop? This actually was a rabbit coop, but due to the toxicity of the world, we no longer keep rabbits. Chickens. You can hear a chicken right now. This does help keep the chickens slightly more on the sane side, but it's still not a perfect endeavor, to say the least. Now, by the time I post this, it's going to be outdated because the narrative on the bird flu is shifting so quickly. Sounds familiar, huh? So in 2021, in my newsletters, I started discussing about the narrative about the bird flu here in Indiana, because they were culling a lot of chickens here. The state of Indiana put out multiple publications in which they stated, okay, we're setting up the surveillance zone. If you have backyard chickens in this surveillance zone, you don't need to contact us. We've already contacted you because we know who has backyard chickens. No, they didn't say because we know. But how can they contact everyone in the surveillance zone who has backyard chickens if they don't already know who has backyard chickens? We do not have to register with the state here if we have backyard chickens. They know. We are down to 5 hens now. We have lost at least 40 chickens over the past 4 years. Prior to 2020, I lost 1 hen ever. Freebie, she was a sweetheart. She was the best chicken ever. No, the second best chicken ever. But she was such a good girl. There was there were reports of both a bobcat and a mountain lion being in the area at the time, so I believe it was a wild cat that snatched her. But again, 1 chicken lost prior to 2020. At least 40 since April 22nd, 2020. Now, you might be wondering what happened April 22nd, 2020. Poison filled by Western medicine, modern construction, corporate interest. It's available anywhere. The ebook is 99 cents. That discusses what happened. I'm not going to go into that a whole lot, but I will state that the SpaceX et al. Dirigible launches are undoubtedly responsible for a significant portion of the avian death that we have seen here, as well as the sicknesses, as well as my sicknesses, as well as my strawberry plants being fried overnight, and as well as the dearth of the pollinators. There's hardly any pollinators around here anymore, except for wasps and carpenter bees. I've seen, maybe a handful of butterflies this year. April 21st, 2020, I was outside and literally skipping for joy because of all the pollinators just all around me. So many butterflies, so many small bees. I was thrilled because I had worked so hard to provide food plants all year round for the pollinators. Now, this morning, I was hand pollinating my cucumber and my butternut squash and a couple of other plants. My tomatoes, I just shake them, and my sweet peppers. But I hand pollinate now. I have to, or I don't get any food out of my garden. According to SpaceX specifically, our county is targeted for various reasons. And thus, we've had problems. I have to give the chickens a lot of extra calcium, and the reason for that is that radio frequencies and microwaves impact the voltage-gated calcium channel in all life. Now, the voltage-gated calcium channel, of course, is going to be more of an issue in an animal such as a chicken or other bird that lays a lot of eggs, because they have to put out a lot of calcium. And thus, we see sick avians. People who don't have chickens or ducks or other such animals, or who don't live in areas that are targeted, like ours are, potentially don't see this as much, or they don't put 2 and 2 together. There are a lot of small farmers who don't put 2 and 2 together, that the world is just more and more toxic by the day. They're also spraying us like bugs here. X gonna get you every morning here over our property, just about. X gonna get you. So we've got toxic air, we've got toxic water, we've got toxic food. Everything's toxic. And we're all being attacked constantly by radio frequencies, microwaves, and other fields. I have discussed, if you look at my video and article on reducing magnetic fields in the kitchen, you know, I touch on the power lines that are way up at the front of our property are now, well, earlier this year they started emitting radio frequencies all the way back to our house. I shielded that with this, which I'll link to below, and got that addressed, had a reprieve for a couple of weeks, and then magnetic fields started coming in all the way from the power lines. So the power lines themselves are problematic. We've got small cell towers everywhere. We've got regular cell phone towers everywhere. People are building their own digital prisons, and on and on and on and on and on. Roosters, we have had roosters. Most of them were insane for no apparent reason. Rabbits we don't have anymore. It was no longer humane for us to keep rabbits. Between blindness, eye problems, cancer, breathing problems, and this was from a number of different lines, breeding lines of rabbits, multiple different breeds, okay? They could not possibly have had any healthier food because almost everything that they ate, I gave them from I produced for them, okay? They had all of these issues. I couldn't keep them anymore. It would be inhumane. Similarly, we've got 5 hens left. I'm not replacing any. Again, we've lost at least 40 over the past 4 years. I lost 1 prior to 2020. 1. Never had a chicken die suddenly. No, I know other people have previously. I didn't have any of those issues with chickens before. I've been sharing the impacts of the SpaceX et al. Launches in our newsletters since 2020. I've been discussing bird flu on and off since 2021 because obviously it's something that is, any legislation that comes along is of issue for someone who has chickens. Now, obviously, the United States and other countries are stockpiling so-called vaccines. And the fact is that those of us, such as you, most likely, and myself, my husband, of course, who said no to experimental gene therapy, well, a lot of us still eat animal products because we know that the United Nations is bunk. We know about climate change, so-called climate change. We know it's not our fault. We know that the war on carbon is just a war on us because we are carbon-based life forms. One way to get that gene editing into us, into the temple of the living God, is via the food supply, via dairy, eggs, and meat. Dave and I are vegetarians. We've been vegetarians for a long time. But if you source your meat from a farmer who raises their animals ethically and who processes or dispatches them humanely, then I applaud you and I support your right to do so. That's what this is all about right now. Obviously, I'm sure they're going to do, well, not sure, but they're probably going to do lockdowns at some point for a alleged bird flu. People are, here's the thing that most people don't realize, and I know that I state this a lot, so I'm sorry that you've heard this a lot, potentially, but all of the frequencies from the small cell towers, etc., have not yet been activated. When they are activated, people will get sick suddenly and die suddenly. Obviously, we've got an epidemic of dying suddenly. I actually recently did a Google search for a couple of people for Dave's business stuff to see, because someone related to them died, and I wanted to see if it was we needed to know if it was one of them, but we don't want to bother people who are grieving. We knew it was a died suddenly case. And I did searches for both of their names and came up with all of these other people. And in the obits for all of these other random people across the country, it's died suddenly, died suddenly, died suddenly, died suddenly. And actually last December we had a case of turbo cancer in our extended family. Real good guy, but I didn't ask, but the likelihood is extremely high that he got the experimental gene therapy. I mean, come on. Very, very high likelihood. He had fought cancer and allegedly won. Had 6 months prior, I think it was 6 months prior, had a clean bill of health. Had back pain, went to the doctor for the back pain, found out he had advanced cancer and he was dead in a week. Talk about turbo cancer. So that was the first in our extended family that has occurred. That side of the family in particular is very healthy stock, very strong stock, farmers, hunters, work on machinery. I've got one second cousin who is a line worker for power lines in his county, I think. You know, they do construction, things like that. So these are very hardy people. These are people who sweat and they go out and garden and they have chickens and they do all of these things. Yet, undoubtedly, many were still deceived by 2020, as evidenced by my grandma being put in a nursing home when she was never supposed to be put in a nursing home, and no one could tell me why she was in the nursing home. I guarantee you she was put in the nursing home because the doctor said COVID is scary and we need to protect her. I know that there is someone else in the family that was of the opinion as me, but I'm in the extended family, but I'm not sure exactly who it is. I have my suspicions as to who. But for the most part, she died of isolation and pharmakia. She was given medication she didn't want to take, and she gave up. She gave up. I called her every day, every single day, and she kept asking me why she was in there, and I couldn't answer. Anyway, sorry, that's a little bit of a... But this is still relevant because it's gonna happen again. They're gonna do it again. They did it once, they're gonna do it again. We know it's gonna happen again. We don't know when. And we know it's probably going to be worse. I saw the most ridiculous article today saying that the precautions are going to be different. They're probably still going to be masks, but we might need to wear goggles. Oh my gosh. You have got to be kidding me. Goggles? Okay. Anyways, but the experience in 2020 is highly relevant to today because so in 2021 a lot with the early so-called bird flu narrative, I saw a lot of parallels to COVID, so-called COVID narrative, and I remember following the alleged COVID narrative in late 2019, and I posted around we don't observe New Year's, but around New Year's of 2021 going into 2021, I posted something that said, you're like a 5 zillion times more likely to die from falling out of bed than to die from COVID. Like, this is not actually a thing. This is not actually a deadly thing. Of course, they've got the PCR tests, which the manufacturers publicly proclaim on their websites are not to be used diagnostically. But if you really want to start talking about viruses, you have to talk about the root causes of disease. I will link to my video on the root causes of disease, which your doctor doesn't know. Are there competing theories to germ theory? Yes, it's called exosome theory and terrain theory. There are many books written about both of those things that I urge you to read and explore yourself. Examine the studies that were done on Spanish flu, which they just couldn't make it contagious in humans or animals. And it was so upsetting and confusing. Okay, they have done very little, or at least very little published research to establish gene theory, or to establish germ theory as a credible theory since that time, because they know they're going to fail. Even if they manipulate the data, even if they do all of the things as far as research methodology goes, to do a crap job on that study and make it say, you know, something that is not true, they're just like, okay, we can't even touch that. Basically. So this whole thing is a war on the temple of the living God. If you really study scripture, this is just going to be a little bit, okay, if you're not into the scriptural stuff, I love you guys. This is just going to be a little bit of a discussion on this. It's all about the temple, okay? Know ye not that you're the temple of the living God? He who destroys the temple of the living God, I can't even remember what the rest of it says, but he shall be destroyed by God, or something like that. Scripturally, I know everybody's talking about my rights. Okay, so since World War II, at least, the United States has been in a constant state of emergency. The last I looked, we were in over 40 states of emergency. When we are in a state of emergency, our constitutional rights are effectually suspended. So if it seems like we don't have any constitutional rights, we don't. I find it likely that it was actually prior to World War II when those rights were suspended continually, but I stopped at World War II. I was like, okay, that's enough. I'm good with that. This is a war on the temple. I consider this, I've been referring to this lately as the great emptying out. So when people got the chemicals, the pharmacia, and the gene editing junk, there went their cognitive faculties. Furthermore, scientists such as Dr. Martin Pall warned prior to 2020 that we were on the great precipice of the greatest cognitive decline in the history of humanity due to 5G and actually 3G and 4G as well, because we haven't seen quite yet really the repercussions of those technologies yet. And so we're seeing this emptying out of the cognitive capacity of humanity at large. And so those who did destroy the temple by their choice, they are really struggling mentally. And you see that they are completely controlled by fear and anger. If they're not in fear, they're angry. You see that they are unable to be in any way professional whatsoever. You know, people who are making bank so much money can't even introduce themselves in an email or text or phone call. It's just, can you fix this thing? Okay, well, where are you? Who are you? I mean, I can't say there's nobody home, because we're not to that, believe it or not, we're not to that point yet where there's nobody home, but we're very, very, very close. It seems. I say we're very, very, very close, but then we've still got a ways to go until we actually get to that point. It's not a 7-year sprint. Go read your Bible. But regardless, this emptying out is essential to make way for the Antichrist. So if you're moving into a new apartment, it's got to be empty for you to move your stuff in, right? You don't go move into an apartment while the previous tenant is still there. The previous tenant has to be kicked out. The previous tenant has to get all their stuff and get out of there. So this is just the beginning of it. This is a precursor this is the first part of the series, which will lead to a complete emptying, which will be their soul is no longer there, or their spirit actually, because we're body, soul, and spirit. That's another discussion. This is all about the temple. So should you keep your own livestock? Well, once these hens are gone, that's it. I can't do it anymore. I cannot do it anymore. I have had so much suffering and death that I have had to deal with in the past 4 years in my animals. And I just can't. I just can't. My cat that I discussed in my book Poisoned, who taught himself how to alert me to anaphylaxis, he developed eye cancer in 2020. That was just, it was so bad. It was so bad. We had to be merciful with him. Besides that, so mandates are not laws. Mandate legally is a law if you comply. However, if you consider in California, I think it was 2019 when they had the Newcastle's disease thing, and the state was going around with these vans or trucks, I'm not sure which, to people who had backyard chickens and gassing their flocks. So people started to be merciful and just take their own flocks out. That was not a state law. And that was against the people's consent who had the backyard chickens. But they forced their way onto their property and killed their animals. This is coming everywhere. Where California goes, the rest of the country goes at some point. Should you keep your own livestock? It is hard. It is not for the faint of heart, especially these days. Now, you may not be in a county that's targeted yet, but get ready, you will be. You cannot escape from this. There is nowhere to escape from this. We live in a very rural area. Especially if you live in a rural area where people like their guns and ammo and are distrustful of Uncle Sam, and who are more likely to have questioned the 2020 narrative, and since then, it's more likely that that county is going to be targeted. You have to be prepared for merciful dispatch of your animals at any time if you have livestock. Pharmakeia, chemicals, EMFs. EMFs are part of pharmakeia because if you can do it with chemicals, you can do it with EMFs. They're all going to get worse. I'll link to my article on microwave sickness below. It's a really, really, really long article. It's so comprehensive. Symptoms, treatment in some ways. Also how it is required by prophecy. Their surveillance state is the fulfillment of prophecy. So if your animals are pretty healthy, you're not dealing with toxic air, if you're not dealing with, so the microwaves are undetectable unless you have a $20,000 plus meter. But if you're not getting otherwise symptoms in your animals due to, microwaves or other radio frequencies, it's a matter of time. You might be forced to keep your animals inside. I had to keep my animals inside, my chickens inside for a while. Because we were having livestock loss at such great numbers, just all at once. It was foxes, undoubtedly, because foxes go around and just kill everything, and then they take one and run. Allegedly with the thought that they'll come back later for the rest. But we never had fox attack before 2020. Here, at another property where we had chickens with a landlord, there was a lot of fox pressure there. So I'm not saying that that's due to 2020, due to what has happened starting in 2020. Which is the increased toxicity of the world. Animals are dumber and dumber. Okay, so humans are dumber and dumber. Whether or not you are putting things in your body knowingly that are toxic, such as pharmaceuticals, or toxic food, toxic water, whether or not you're doing those things, we are all dumber than we used to be. We are all less able to physically function because we're all being poisoned more and more and more. And animals are going to reflect this. So wild animals are going to reflect this. Hawks, for example, they're more aggressive than they used to be here starting in 2020. They became much more aggressive. Wasps are also a lot, I know wasps are not actually an animal, but wasps are much more aggressive than they used to be here. I never got stung by a wasp until 2020, and then I don't even know how many times I've been stung since. You can't hide your chickens from Uncle Sam. You can't hide your ducks, any livestock, any animals you have, you cannot hide. Again, state of Indiana, we know who has backyard chickens, and we have contacted them. So you can't hide that. We know. It's only a matter of time before something happens. If you have livestock, carefully consider whether you to get more or not. If you're pondering livestock, I wouldn't really recommend it because it's going to be harder. And I don't think that they're going to kill all of the chickens, etc. I think that what they're going to do is somehow require the mRNA to be put into chickens. Of course, they're talking about it being in pretty much all animals, you know, bird flu and cats. How do we, like I saw earlier today, a headline, how do we protect our cats from bird flu? Because there's bird flu in cats now, you know, because they can get to cats too. And, you know, so they're coming for your everything, and that is what prophecy says. They're coming for your everything. Yes, they are. The question that you need to ask yourself is, well, first of all, what's your line? Number two, if you are a follower of the Lord, which, by the way, not churchianity, no, almost a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump, and almost everything taught by churches is a lie. I will link to my article with videos demonstrating my tools that I use to study the original languages of prophecy, or the original languages of scripture. Almost everything's a lie. Okay, and that's how it's supposed to be in the end times. That was how it was prophesied to be. That includes not just the Rockefeller educated pastors, but also the people with 80,000 plus subscribers on YouTube, etc., who claim the name. Well, many shall come to me in that name, saying that they have done all of these things, but I never knew them. I never knew you. We are targeted here. All is the fulfillment of prophecy. Think about things. If you need some information on chickens, you can go to our website, search for chickens. I do have some information on that, including a post from quite some time ago about how I figured out how to help them deal with microbe sickness. Hang in there. Do what you can. Those who endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. But then Isaiah 57:1, the righteous one perisheth, and no man taketh it to heart. And merciful men are taken away, but no man considereth. The merciful are taken away from the faces of the evil. Hang in there. Now Toxic out.